Hey, it's Krystin. Today I'm gonna do something a little bit different and get into my crafty side. And I'm gonna show you guys how to create these clay version of the popsicles of the freezer bunny. I have been wanting to make a melted version of the freezer bunny and thought it would be so cute as a jewelry holder. So I'm gonna show you guys the full tutorial, and all you're going to need is clay, paint, and Mod Podge for a finish. So let's get started. First, we're gonna pull out our clay. You can use any clay like the Crayola brand. My favorite one is this one that you can get pretty much everywhere. It's the DAS or DAS. You're also gonna need a rolling pin. These are going to make it so the thickness of the clay stays the same. Or you can use popsicle sticks, clay tools if you have them. And you are gonna need a popsicle stick for the full look of the freezer bunny popsicle. We're gonna use smaller popsicle sticks for a little bit of the base, and you're gonna need a little bit of water. I created a template of the freezer bunny, and I kind of made this roughly the size of my hand. And then I also made a version of the freezer bunny, and I just went ahead and bent the ears, and you'll see why later. This is going to be for that melted freezer bunny, and you're gonna need a puddle for the melted ice cream. And you can see the size of the melted ice cream. I did it a little bit bigger than the freezer bunny. Okay, so I'm gonna get started by pulling out some of the clay. Let's get this out, and we're just gonna warm it up a little bit, rolling it in our hands. This will make it a lot easier to work with. Okay, so next I'm going to use the depth pieces of wood. Again, you can use anything that you have, even if you have paint stir sticks. I'm gonna figure out how wide we need to make sure these are. Let's place down the clay, grab our rolling pin, and I needed something bigger. There. So this just keeps the clay the same depth, so it's even. All right, so we're just gonna place the template on top of the clay, and we're gonna take our little cutter, and we're just gonna trace around the template into the clay. All right, now that we have it traced, I'm just gonna take this cutter and go along the line a little bit easier just so that it cuts and gives us a nice edge. Pull away all of the excess clay. And this is where we're gonna need the water to go along the edge and just really shape it and take that hard edge off, because this is melted ice cream, so we do want to make this nice and smooth. Next up, I'm gonna make the edge of the jewelry container, so this one's gonna be kind of like longer and thinner, because it's just the edge piece. I'm gonna make it the same width. And I'm just gonna make this about this wide. You can use your popsicle sticks if you just wanna make sure that they're even. And I'm just gonna cut a couple strips. We can blend them together to make them longer. So we have one. And let's do just another piece to make sure we have enough. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut the edges. Next, we're just gonna score the edge of the bottom piece of the jewelry holder. We're gonna do the same with the edge, and this is just gonna make sure that it sticks together when we use some of that clay glue. So So do the same thing along the edge of the strip. Next, I'm just going to take a mixture of the clay and water. And if you mix it together, it kind of looks like glue. And if you add this, it kind of makes like a little bonding glue. Just helps it stick and does not come apart. You're just gonna make sure that there is no spaces and no gaps. And cut it together. It kind of looks like a cloud. So you really want to take your time with this part because this is going to be the bottom of that jewelry tray. And I'm just trying to make the edges look as put together as I can. We are going to be sanding this after it dries, but I'm trying to get it as good as possible. And I'm just using some of the clay tools just to kind of make it fit a little bit better where we join the two pieces of clay. And using some of that mixture of clay and water. Now to make sure that it fits a bit better, I'm going to take strips of clay that I've rounded out like a worm, and I'm just going to kind of blend that into the bottom of the trinket tray and into the side. This is extremely time consuming. You can see how slow I'm going. But you really want to make this blend into the side and bottom. Just helps add a little structure and a little strength so it does stay together. That's my biggest worry when combining clay pieces, is that they will fall apart. So just take your time with this and blend it together. And if you need to use water to help you kind of blend it and smooth it, you can use that also. Just making sure to keep the shape. Kind of looks like a cloud still. Okay, next we're making a freezer bunny again, so I'm gonna go ahead and add some clay. Roll it out so it's even, and making sure it's wide enough to fit the mold or the template. Alright, so once again I'm gonna take that spiky thing and kind of trace around the template. Really make sure to take your time with this part just so that you get it exactly the way you want it. You don't want to have to sand away the shape. And now that we have it traced, we can go back over and make sure that we cut completely through the clay. I've sped this part up, but definitely take your time so that you get the right shape. And removing all of the excess clay, just gonna set that aside. Okay, so again, we're gonna take the water going along the edge just to smooth it out. Making sure there's no rough edges. And shaping the feet so they're rounded. Okay, so now I'm gonna take my little spiky thing once again and the thick popsicle stick. You can find them at the dollar store, that's where I got mine. And we're just going to be poking an area that we can shove that popsicle stick into, and that we don't lose the shape of the freezer bunny. And I'm just gonna cut a little bit of this off, because I don't really want this to poke through the top where the ears are. Then we're gonna shove this into the hole that we created so we keep the shape. And just go really careful because you don't want this to poke through the clay. But if it happens, you can just add more clay to smooth it out. Make sure there's no air pockets, because again, you are going to want this as smooth as you can get it. Now I'm just placing these on parchment paper and a cookie tray to harden. So moving those out of the way, I'm going ahead and making the melted part of the freezer bunny. So again, we're just going to roll out our piece of clay, keeping it the same width as the others. Adding the template onto the clay, and we're just going to once again trace around it. Now this one's going to be a little bit differently because we're actually not going to be using the ears. The melted part that we created of the tray is kind of supposed to be like the melted part of the bunny and the ears. So we're only going to need to draw to about here. And you'll see this come together where the freezer bunny's kind of crooked. And again, we're just cutting through that clay, taking our time, and smoothing the ice cream edges. Now this is supposed to all be ice cream and food, so if it's not perfect, that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. Have you ever seen a SpongeBob popsicle? Those things they're not cute. So if you mess up, it kind of just looks the way it's supposed to. Alright, so I went ahead and smoothed the edges, and now we're going to take our smaller normal popsicle sticks, and I'm going to cut little pieces about this size, and I'm going to use 4 of them. Next, we're going to take our little spiky metal thing. If you have a butter knife, that'll work also, or other clay tools. In the same way we did the popsicle stick before, this time we're just making 4 little slits where the ears are, or where the ears are supposed to be. And we're going to be adding these halfway inside. These are going to act as stabilizers, and they're just going to kind of go into the bottom of the tray, just to help this stick and add some stability. So it's like teeth on the bottom. So that's where the ears are supposed to be. Now in between the bottom, this is where the popsicle stick handle is going to be. So once again, we're just cutting a slit, taking the second big popsicle stick and cutting some off the bottom. Once again, we're going to take the popsicle stick and shove it in, making sure to not pop this through. And we're going to press out any of the air bubbles and make it as smooth as possible. So it's kind of looking a little weird right now, but we have our handle, and where the ears are the different pieces of those popsicle sticks. Next, I'm just going to set this kind of in the middle, and it kind of gave us a guide. And once again, we're going to make these lines so that when we add that clay glue, it's going to help this stick together. Because this is the tray that looks like the freezer bunny has kind of fallen and it's melted all around it. So we're adding the clay glue. I forget what this is called. I think there's a technical name like slurry. And then we're going to take those little pieces of the popsicle stick that we added in for stabilizer, and we're going to push them into the bottom of the tray. And you're gonna kind of go back and forth. And I'm gonna be adding more clay along the bottom. So this is gonna look like that ice cream is melting, but it's also gonna add some more stability just to kind of help this stay upright. And use your tool just to kind of spread it together. You want this to blend in with the popsicle and the puddle below. We're just kind of making a clay mess, but there's a purpose. Take your time with this and try to keep it as smooth as possible. All right, so this is what it should look like. Don't worry if you get clay on the popsicle stick, we can just wash that off with soap and water. Okay, so now they have hardened for a few days. And this is where things are going to get messy because we're going to sand the edges and make these as smooth as we can. And on both pieces. And the side, I knew this part was going to be messy, so ignore the fact my nails are not painted because I had to wash my hands a billion times doing this. And if you have any rough edges that when you are adding in any of the extra clay, you can use it to smooth it. Next, we're taking gesso. So gesso just kind of acts as a barrier between the clay and the paint. Usually it's fine, but if you was to go in with your paint right onto the clay, sometimes the clay can act like a sponge and pull the paint in, and you need a couple extra layers. So if you just go in with a coat of gesso, it makes it so that your paint doesn't absorb into the clay, if that makes sense. So just saves a lot of work. And I'm just making sure to go in with a really thick coat of this because it's going to help fill in all of those cracks from the clay. And I'm also making sure to keep it as like minimal streaks as I can. And going back over the edges and the front and the back to keep it as smooth as possible. And of course, doing the same with a jewelry holder, going along the sides, the top edges, and I also did the bottom. Some of the clips were kind of hard to film because this does have a lot of weird angles. So this part did take a long time. And again, I just went over it a million times, making sure it was as less streaky as I could get it. And now we are trying to get the color of the freezer bunny. I went in first with conch shell from Folk Art, but I didn't find this was the right color for the freezer bunny, so I tried adding in candy pink from Apple Barn or Apple Barrel. This one was definitely a brighter pink. And my reference pictures, mixing it together, and again, it's not really the right color that I wanted. So we're starting from scratch. So I'm just gonna go in with white and the candy pink, and I'm gonna try to mix my own soft pink freezer bunny pink. I don't even know, what's the skew color for that? So this is using a lot of white and then a good amount of that pink. And I'm just gonna mix it all together. And it actually looks pretty close to the Bristol board behind. So I think this is going to be perfect. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started with the first layer. I'm actually gonna do 2 coats of the pink. So we're gonna add it on the freezer bunny. And I'm also making sure to paint the sides, the bottom. And I recommend doing the sides first. And just trying to make sure to work out all of the streaks. And of course, painting that jewelry holder. This one took a lot of time because there are so many edges, and I also painted the bottom of it also. And of course, if you guys are noticing the color change, this took a lot of time, so some of these clips I did in the evening. But yeah, so we're doing our second coat. I really just want to make sure there's no white showing, and the color is completely even. Keeping it super smooth. And the second coat over on the jewelry holder. I think this one's my favorite of the two. And I'm also still using the paint to fill in as many of those edges as I can and the little cracks. Alright, so here's what the jewelry holder looks like so far. So next I'm going to take some of the templates that I created to add in the eyes, nose, mouth, the little toes, and even the ears. So just draw it super soft with like a pencil. And next we're going to go in with that same pink, and I just added a bit of red until it darkened a little bit. This makes the perfect complementary color for the freezer bunny. So we need to color in the ears. And I am going to actually do 2 coats for all of the accents. Just make sure to take your time, but if you do happen to mess up, you can just go back in afterwards and clean it up with that light pink. And let's do the toes. Now, just using for reference, I actually almost forgot about the cheeks, so I'm just going to sketch those in under the eyes. So they're kind of just these long ovals. And I'm going to use that same pink that we used for the toes and the ears. And I'm just trying to not go in completely where the whites of the eyes are going to be. But make sure to do the toes over on the jewelry holder. These are actually going to be on the top side. And the last 2. Now when it comes to the ears of the jewelry holder, keep in mind that these ears have melted and that's the bottom part. So you want these to actually look melted and wonky. Do not do these ones straight because they are meant to look super gooey. Just kind of making these ones look like it's melted down into the ice cream. Now we're gonna add in the white for the eyes. I always struggle with doing perfect circles, but again, I'm gonna do 2 coats on the white as well because I also want to make sure that the pink from the cheeks are completely covered. And now doing the eyes on the ice cream. So this one's a lot harder to do. Trying to make sure to keep that circle, and if you wanted to make the eyes a little wonky and droopy also, it would just make it look like it's melting. So now just doing the second coat on both of the eyes and over on the jewelry holder. Alright, so now we need a brown. This is the one that I used for the eyes and the mouth. And it's definitely giving chocolate bunny. So I'm using some of these ball tools for clay. And I'm going to use these to dot the paint in the middle of the eye. Just to help me keep as much of a circle as I can. So just go over this as many times and definitely take your time for this. So just filling in the middle of the eye. And next I'm just taking a smaller brush with that same brown color, and this is going to be the mouth on the bunny. And putting this on the popsicle. Some of the pictures used a darker pink, some of them used black, but I really like the ones that use the brown. It definitely gives it that real popsicle dessert look. All right, so for the nose, I'm gonna go in with that same darker pink that we used for the ears and cheeks. And I'm just gonna do like a rounded triangle for the nose. Oh my gosh. This is turning out exactly the way I pictured it in my head. Same thing over for the melted popsicle. Again, this one is definitely a lot harder to do because it is upside down and the shape's a bit wonky. Now set these aside to dry 100%. And once they're dry, we're going to seal it, and I'm using the glossy Mod Podge. So you can see that it is fully matte. There's different types of Mod Podge that you can get. If you just wanted it to stay a matte color, you can use a matte Mod Podge. It just helps it from getting nicked and scratched. And it does look a little bit cloudy when you paint this on, but it does dry completely clear. So don't worry if when you're putting it on, you feel like the face has lost some of the look to it. It will dry. You'll see at the end. So again, I'm just putting this on, trying to keep the streaks as down as I can. So you just want to make sure that you're painting in like the same direction. And doing the same thing for the jewelry holder, all along the edge, the sides, and making sure to get in every nook and cranny. Take your time with this, just because you don't really want any drips, but if it does, it's fine, because it is ice cream. And doing just a few touch-ups. And done. Here is our freezer bunny popsicle. I think this turned out so adorable. Oh my gosh. I would totally snack on one of these. Okay, so I had this idea in my head because I love the freezer bunny. I am so obsessed with it as the popsicle version. And I just kind of wanted to make this into the jewelry container. And I have so many other ideas to create like Sims DIYs. If you guys want to see more of these, please let me know in the comments, because I am like obsessed with doing these. This is what the backside looks like. So it's just melted. I don't know. I picture this to be strawberry or cherry flavored. And our set. And of course, you can throw your jewelry on it. Make sure you guys are subscribed. I'll see you next time.